I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with a cattle market summary for the week ending October the 21st, brought to you in part by the International Brangus Breeders Association. Have you sacrificed growth in your herd for carcass improvement? Brangus Genetics add pounds and performance and improved yield grade without giving up marbling and quality grade. Build with Brangus to build your bottom line. For more information or to find a breeder near you, visit gobrangus.com. It looks like we're finally turning the tide on this down market here. We've been in a bear market for really 2 years, and we've had a couple of interruptions in there, but this looks like the big drop, the big one, if you will, of the whole wreck. And looks like now we're just finally about to turn the tide on this thing and get things going, if not back in the north direction, at least kind of steady. So we were coming down this hill. We don't know if we've got more to go or we're going to plane out for a while. But you look at your cattle futures this week. Live cattle futures for December on Monday was up $1.55. Tuesday up 22 cents. Wednesday they tried to take her down 210 on Wednesday. But then when they sold those few fat cattle higher on Wednesday afternoon, then they about had to turn that board around on Thursday, which was up the $3 limit on Thursday. Friday was up $1.75 to end the week with December live cattle at 101.87. The October spot market is at 101.15, but both of those are really trading at a little bit back of which are out fronts, which February and April are both at a premium, but then you've got that big $7 or more drop off when you get into June, and that's one of the main reasons why these lighter calves are so much cheaper than compared to what they ought to be when you've got cheap feed. But feeder cattle, November contract was up $1.57 on Monday. Tuesday was up 80 cents. Wednesday was down 3.20. Thursday everything bounced back up there, up 4.02, and Friday up 85 cents to end the week at 119.70. October spot feeders at 121.87. But you look at your fat cattle trade, which there really wasn't much fat cattle trade. Now there's two ways to handle this. They can either put their heels in, dig in, because we know these packers need cattle too, or they can start puking them up this week. They really have a chance to dig in. I know they need to move some cattle. They're trying to stay current. But you've got to make those packers come to their milk a little bit whenever you know that they need cattle here. We're at the end of the towards the end of the month there, and they're trying to keep these kills up. They've been making a lot of money, and so far through Thursday was only 28,200 head in negotiated sales, which is about a quarter of what they've been selling on negotiated sales lately. Unless they did some late business Friday that we don't know about, or maybe something over the weekend, they're going to have to come into the market early in the week and start buying some cattle to get things kicked off here. If they do, how much more money do you want? Go ahead and get a price back up over $1 there and try to turn this thing around. But at least gain some ground this week. Got to. Last week's trade, pretty minimal trade there, $97 to $99. A lot of it 98, but it looks like the weighted average is going to be a pinch over 98, so that's a pretty good test there. Your dress sales 154 to 155, but your weighted average so far is real close to 154. Been keeping the slaughter up pretty good. The slaughter for last week was estimated at 602,000 with a pretty decent Saturday of 45,000 head. That was for the week 1,000 more than the previous week, and 49,000 more than the same week a year ago. Now the actual weights on your slaughter come out last Thursday, and it's about a 2-week delay there, is at 911 pounds. It was still up 2 pounds, so we haven't got to the point where we're starting to harvest these cattle lighter yet. Still gaining there. We should be getting into some tighter market ready cattle sometime in November and December there, which should also lend quite a bit of leverage. And if we get this thing turned around a little bit before we get into that, we could gain quite a bit of ground there at the end of the year. Box beef cutout values continue to fade. We keep looking for a fall turnaround, but we haven't seen one yet. Your average weekly trade on your choice carcasses, $179.99 which was $2.44 less than the previous week. Selects 169.53, down 336. And if you look at this, it looks like your middlemen are making a lot of money here. We've got these box beef cutout values down there, and your packers are making pretty good money. You know, when we had those real high markets where way up over $1.50 for fats on a live basis there, you saw your box beef cutout values running, you know, right in that same area. So there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made in there. Now you see that choice box beef cutout values average sales around $1.80, and they're buying cattle in the low 150s. There's a lot of gravy in there. Well, there's also a lot of gravy for those middlemen because they haven't backed up. Sure, they're getting down there and they're running specials on hamburger meat and stuff like that, maybe $1.99, which would be good, but a lot of that's on some stuff coming over, grass-fed stuff, and old cows, wheat coming over from different countries that don't have the same kind of a fed cattle setup as we have. It's sure not out of young steers and heifers, I promise you that. But your middle meats, your expensive cuts there, your ribeyes and things like that, haven't come down the same in percentage as what fat cattle and what these box beef levels have come at. So you're seeing those guys in the middle making a lot of money. Your packers have been making a lot of money, and they're also most of the guys in the middle because they pretty much own everything from the bottom all the way to the top. But one thing that we can't get around is the competition from pork. You know, it's one thing to talk about lamb, it's one thing to talk about chicken, but you know, I tell you what, a good pork chop, you can throw that thing on the grill, and if you kind of watch what you're doing, it's a pretty good competitor. It's not too bad. All of us kind of can get by with it with a good pork chop or something like that, and it's a lot of competition on our beef. And when we've got all-time record hog kills like we had this week, all-time most hogs ever killed in a week in the United States. Over 2.5 million hogs killed this past week, and it was the biggest by more than 15,000, or by almost 15,000 compared to the last record, which was a couple of years ago. But that's a lot of competition there, and we can cuss a lot of different things, but basically it's supply and demand, and there's a lot of red meat there, and pork might consider themselves the other white meat, but it's an awful close competitor to our highest cuts of beef. Look at your cash feeder cattle market. You know, if you look back at the market, your yearlings started lower. You know, we tried to hold things mostly steady in the big markets on Monday, but they ended up fading lower. And we're sure lower by Wednesday, and we look like we were going to continue to fade. But then Thursday and Friday markets made a big recovery with the board and with the fat cattle trade that we saw there. So ending the week mostly steady, really. We lost a little ground and gained it back. But I would look for these big Monday markets here to be quite a bit higher, especially up north. They're starting to get on the backside of this harvest a little bit, and they'll be putting some orders in for some cattle to walk that corn to town. Calves were still weaker, weak to $5 lower in most areas, especially in the southeast, because they're just not getting a whole lot of orders for those calves to go west with. But a lot of these guys that are going to graze wheat cattle have just been putting off buying these cattle because they were afraid they're going to give too much for them. Some of them that did get started buying them, then they really had no idea what cheap was because they just kept getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every week when they thought they were starting out pretty good. So they just held off finishing out buying the calves that they needed to turn out on wheat. Well, now that it appears that this market has kind of slowed down at least, or if not stopped dropping, that's going to give a lot of these guys enough confidence, these stocker buyers, to come in and order some calves for wheat. We may see more demand nearby in more native type cattle rather than ordering so many out of the southeast like what they typically do down here in the southern plains. Here I'm in the Texas Panhandle, Amarillo area, in western Kansas and western Oklahoma. They normally just order calves out of the southeast, get them in, straighten them up. but they'd like to get those cattle turned out on wheat by November 15th. Well, they're not going to quite have enough time. 2 weeks is not long enough to try to straighten up these calves coming out of the southeast. None of them are weaned, none of them had their shots. The bulls aren't worked. That's a lot of stress coming out of the hauling them that far within just a few days of being pulled off their mamas and shoved through a sale barn. Once they get those cattle straightened up, they love them. There's a lot of growth to those cattle. Cattle got a little more age than the local cattle. They're not as fleshy. They're not buying a lot of fill and flesh and things like that. They like those cattle. They don't have to be all peas in a pod. They really perform well, but they've waited to buy those things, and here we are at the end of October. They've only got 2 weeks till they want to get turned out on that wheat, and a lot of this wheat's pretty rank. They could get some good growth on it before we get cold weather or before it gets any harder of a freeze, and they want to take advantage of that, so they may be buying calves closer to home. So I would definitely look for an improved market in your Oklahoma, in your Texas, southern Colorado, maybe New Mexico, places where they do have some native type calves to sell that should be a little bit easier to straighten up. But you look at the cattle on feed report that come out on Friday, which was looks like it could be a pretty good boost to these feeder cattle prices. It shouldn't have a whole lot to do with fats, but it should have something to do with feeder cattle prices. Yawn feed as of October the 1st was 100%, or basically the same as the same time a year ago, which was fairly friendly. Your placements was a big number, coming in at 98%, and the average of analyst guess was 104. So if the placements weren't nearly that heavy, that's a big boost to your feeder cattle market. And marketings were 105, which was also strong. So we're not going to be anything negative coming out of cattle on feed. So everything is in the cattle market's favor right now. So we should be able to gain some pretty good ground. Actually, hopefully it doesn't get too wild this week, because that could give a kind of rubber band knee-jerk reaction, snap back. But people should go into this week with a lot of confidence, both on fats and feeder cattle and calves, where there are some yearlings available. Those should sell really well. And like I say, this weather's starting to calm down a little bit. We're getting freezes coming down from north to south a little bit more all the time. And it should start to look good for raising cattle, and it's going to be awful good cattle feeding weather. But you look at Lexington, Nebraska there on Friday on Cattle Market Central. Look at the market report that come out of there. And granted, this past week was a whole lot better sale than the week before, because they had a lot bigger run. Going to be more buyers there and everything. But also getting a jolt from what happened on Thursday and Friday. But you look at your 5-weight calves averaging 136.72, and your 6 weights at 131.67, and both of those are close to $12 higher than the previous week. But if you're interested more in Cattle Market Central, go on to cattlemarketcentral.com, get your login number, go on there, look at markets, play with them, run different special reports and things, compare markets from down in the southeast or close to home if you want to, and then tack your freight on and your other expenses and make a comparison, see where it's best to buy cattle. And if you have a market or a sale barn there that you would like to get listed, contact us and we'll do our best to try to get you on there. Go to DV Auction and check out our slate of auctions. We have regular commercial feeder cattle auctions every day of the week. We've also got a lot of those big production sales, usually closer to the weekends. If you have a purebred herd and you are going to have a big production sale coming up this spring, get a head start, get a contact to us, and you can add thousands and thousands of more buying power than what you can get to your place just by putting them on DV Auction. But from my home office here in Canyon, Texas, we'll talk to you on Wednesday.